other options
we
to
do
go in there.
in-house?
How can we whittle that sucker down?
Okay, well, let's go. Give me some hope tonight.
Everything,
Right now,
everything in here except for that $16 million is manageable.
I agree.
That $16 million, we just got to figure that rascal out. And quite frankly, I don't know how to do it just yet.
And that $16 million came from basically B&B Consultants' estimate, based on the length of line and all that.
That's a full report, charts, drawings, and diagrams.
Let me make it clear, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
because I spoke with some people, the Armory people, and I said, there is a way to do the Armory. If we can get a 10-year lease, if we can raise meals tax, if we can raise hotel tax,
Right.
and we can, but I can just tell you now, looking at it, that I was wrong. If you look at this in a concise way, we don't have the budget for fund money of any kind. Not saying that we won't, not saying that we won't take on some needed projects and I'm sorry, it wasn't any trickery, but when you sit down and look at it, this took a lot of work on
Oh, it's a
Jennifer
great
Hardy's
report.
work.
I commend the
And
report.
Philip
I'm not
did
mad
a lot
about
of
the
work.
report. I don't doubt the report. I commend the report. It's like a book you buy. It's a great book. I just didn't like the plot. The plot's not looking too good. It's well written.
We need to look at how to fund that 16 million or reduce the cost or come up with options. I think we're able to manage the other issues. It's not pretty all the time, let's get the reserves done, fund the depreciation so we don't go another $1 million or $2 million in debt. And we gotta get serious about trying to figure this water system out because the lines ain't getting any new.
There is a motion made by Mr. Green, seconded by Mr. McCure to adopt this plan that's outlined before you. Is there any further discussion? It is so significant, I will ask for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Scott.
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0. Additional committee report. Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you, Mr. Van Norbeck, and thank you, Ms. Hardy. Moving right along, the Employment Police Committee met. I believe those are closed sessions, and we're going to have a closed session tonight to discuss the treasurer's vacancy, upcoming vacancy. I apologize. Airport and Transportation, Mr. McCure.
I'm gonna let my town manager.
What's going on?
Because, I understand what's going on, but I'm not so sure that I can explain it.
Okay.
Let me find it in the packet here, hang on. Airport and Transportation.
Yes.
As you know, we have UAV Pro. Mr. Allman has a option. He wishes to exercise to purchase the 8 acres that the option included. I think there was already an agreed upon price in the option of $5,700 an acre. That was what was approved by the town council. I've got a copy of it, but Mr. Allman would like to exercise the option. I do believe we need from this group tonight authorization to advertise surplus and sale of property and move forward with those at the November council meeting. And it would be a total of 8 acres. And I believe the price is $5,700, but that'll be in the advertisements and that sort of thing for next month.
Before you go any further, I asked this out of ignorance. If he's got an option, why do we have to act? I don't understand.
Because I
He
do
has
believe
an option to purchase, then why?
state code requires.
Okay, well, then that's why I said I was there.
This one, they bought 5. This would give them 8 for a total of 13 acres roughly here, but roundabout.
Roughly.
How much town-owned acreage is left out there?
I believe we looked at it the other night. It was about 9 acres, 10 acres. Yeah.
Be about 9 or 10 acres remaining. Mm-hmm. And, okay.
And then also the survey of the 8 acres would be conducted on a 50-50
Okay.
share,
That's
I think
fair.
is what the committee recommend.
Members of council, what's your pleasure? You've got a committee recommendation to 3-0 to,
I move to approve of the committee's recommendation.
Second.
motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Second item, as part of what we're trying to accomplish with our airport layout plan and with what Joe's doing and all the things that have been taking place at the airport, one of the issues that we don't have addressed at the airport is we don't have a combined stormwater project or holding facility out there. If you look at our industrial park over here at behind Babs, we have a single stormwater detention facility. Right now, as it stands at the airport, every time a building, whether it's the town or Joe, builds out there or a development, we got to have a separate stormwater pond put in. Okay? What I would like council to authorize is that we do a combined facility. If we can reuse what Joe's already constructed out there, anything in addition, but instead of using up a significant amount of acreage, I hope to have a combined and single stormwater facility out there. I don't know how,
I'm sorry, forgive me for interrupting. That would be significantly more property to have more business, more commerce.
I think it would free up property that you don't have to sell to somebody to put a stormwater pond in.
We have over 10 acres now.
How
Well,
many
no,
acres?
no, we have 10 acres of vacant land, but we have a significant amount of land next to the hangars and those kinds of areas. And what our airport layout plan is additional taxiways and permeable surfaces. I would like to go ahead and take the entire 31 acres and put it in a stormwater plan. That includes the property that Joe would like to buy, that Joe has bought, and the property we've owned and still have for sale, and make one significant stormwater facility. It may come back that's not possible, or doesn't make sense, but what I'm asking you is to authorize B&B Consultants to put together the design and calculations in order to do a single stormwater facility.
Which your rough estimate is about between 50,000 and 100,000, rough estimate.
I don't know the construction cost, but I do know their cost to do the design,
22,000.
20,000.
And we,
And there's a task order attached, I believe.
and we made a motion to make a recommendation to council to that effect.
The only way this town can generate revenue at the airport at this time is through the sale of property and the sale of jet fuel.
And avgas.
And all those proceeds must go back into the airport.
And this will do that.
Okay. I'm just
That's where
asking.
this $20,000 would come.
Okay, what is council's pleasure? Is there a recommendation to
And
proceed?
you have currently $160,000 in the airport fund?
I think we have actually cash 120. We still have $40,000 of cash that we need to put in as well that's still in the checking account.
How long does it take to accumulate such?
Depends on use.
This
Goodness.
is the month we normally sell a lot, don't it?
I can tell you the general aviation doesn't amount. If the National Guard brings in an appreciable number of aircraft, it doesn't take long. If they don't bring in a lot of aircraft, it takes longer. And usually in the spring, we have appreciable numbers of
If you do
aircraft.
projects like this, what do you use the money for? I mean, it's,
Put in a road.
I mean, we're just pretty much, this, it's
fences.
not optional. I mean, yeah,
So what I'm hearing, you think you've got enough money today to do the project, from all the way through?
The design of the stormwater. But remember, we've already committed ourselves to doing the road.
Right.
Okay? And we have a capital improvement plan project that's in the budget to replace some piping and do some painting out there. Okay? That's not an immediate need, but I think it's going to be less. But I think we've got enough money to take care of the road construction commitment, the painting and repiping at the fuel farm, and this design work. The construction, we're going to have to sit down and have a conversation once they come back and tell me it's going to be 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, whatever it's going to be. And hopefully it's a small number, but we'll have to have that conversation.
I move we accept the recommendation and approve.
on the stormwater management. Mr. Nash is second. Any further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Scott.
And we'll hold the public hearings at the next council meeting.
What's that?
We'll hold the public hearings for the disposition.
Yes. Public hearing will be to sell the other 8 acres.
Let me bring up one thing before we,
Yes, sir.
if we build this common pond, the value of the remaining property we have for sale out there will be elevated immensely.
Well, good.
I would think it would triple the value of it.
When you take a look at what Joe had to spend on building the one he had, and the grief that he had to go through with DEA.
DEQ.
DEQ.
Yeah, not DEA, not DEA. What do y'all got, hemp out there?
We got a little business on the side. That property is gonna be worth a considerable amount more money.
Well, that's good. The main thing, like I said, we're doing things, selling land's nice, but if people are working and they're able to shop and come to Blackstone, that's the untraceable benefit.
That's only interest we'll ever get on this,
That's right, that's right.
because you can't take the money on it.
Can't take the money, so let's help folks create jobs out there, and good paying jobs, and that's great. Moving right along, we have the, if I'm okay, Health and Ordinance Committee, several recommendations, starting with Mr. Scott.
Itinerant merchants license, I think
Itinerant merchant.
we covered some of that tonight, but what came out of the Health and Ordinance Committee was that the itinerant merchants may not operate in the historic district, okay, or the streets within, or on town-owned property. In addition, we also had the issue that recently came up, and Tessie advised us on this, about farmers markets. Okay, we all know that a farmer who raises his own produce is not subject to taxation if he sells his own produce. We have a guy that had set up in the town square. There were some concerns whether he was selling produce that he raised. And indeed, I had that conversation with him. Anything you're not raising is subject to taxation. Okay? The question was that I had for Tessie that came out at the Health and Ordinance, does a permanent farmer's market constitute permanent situs? Do you have to get an itinerant merchant's license, or do you have to get a regular business license? And the response is, farmers markets, if they're not selling produce that they raise themselves, as an itinerant merchant.
So if you're a farmer and you show up, well, obviously anybody that's smart is gonna say, yeah, I raised all this. And how would you go back and check?
I don't know, you'd have to sleuth it.
This came up about a
yeah.
decade ago. This came up. I remember when Larry, and I remember I think we actually had somebody sign off and attest. And that's about all you can do. So we have two farmers markets in town. The one on Church Street is fairly regular.
Mm-hmm.
And this,
I remember back in
Yeah.
this, and I was a whole lot younger and
Yeah.
wasn't around a whole lot, but I remember that we actually had to, not we, but the town would go back to, I don't know if it was the Farm Bureau agency or something, and get them to actually sign off and say they are a farmer, they raised this.
that question has come up before. When I was looking at the committee, I'm like, this is not a new issue. It just kind of got quiet for a while.
Some sort of affidavit or something saying that they did it.
Right.
I think that's what it said.
Some of those produce do come from out of town, though.
Right.
And admittedly, the fellow in the town square said, yeah, I'm not raising a portion of these things. And I said, they are taxable. The issue was,
Not raising them?
he's not raising everything he was selling in the square.
Okay.
And he'd actually, admittedly said so. There was no underhandedness about it. And he said, and I said, that is subject to taxation. I guess the question was, is it a itinerant merchant's license or is it a business license? Is the Farm Bureau, or the farmer's market a permanent site? And Tessie's recommendation and opinion is it is not a permanent site and would have to have an itinerant merchant's license for any items not grown by the farmer.
So let's just use this example. I don't mind telling you, Willow Land Farms to Thompson's, and starting next year, if they're going to do this, they'd have to pay the $500 fee up for the year,
Starting immediately.
If they are not growing the produce themselves.
which they've already told you they're not.
They're not.
Okay. We're going to make him prorate like we did Mr. Johnson.
Well, I don't know if they're coming back.
Might be done
I've talked
for
to
the year.
Zach.
Mr. Johnson has a hand up real quick, and then I want to make a point. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Well, how come they could still sell downtown in historical business areas?
Well, I can here.
I don't care if they don't pay taxes or not.
Here's the answer to that question. This is a question I don't like the answer, but this is the answer. The town council voted 2 years ago to give scheduling and program authority of that town-owned property to DBI. Love DBI, no problem there. My question for the council is, do you think it's wise, I ask it again, to delegate scheduling and programming of town-owned property to entities not answerable to the voters? It's just,
That's a point, but if I recall during our committee meeting, Tessie clarified that any farmer, they can come on the front steps right here.
State code
and-
allows them.
And sell, because they're a farmer, a dairyman, a charcoal maker, whatever. They can come out on the front steps right there. So we can't stop a farmer that grows everything, 100% of their stuff, from coming in the square.
can they go in C Park? So
It's
so
a
my dad and I
public-
raise a bunch of cattle, and we just show them C Park one day and say, hey,
I think you need to ask Tessie. She's
Yeah, and just to clarify that answer, essentially what the code says is, in so many words, if you're a farmer selling what you raise, then you are exempt from the itinerant and peddler's tax license fee. And that is by code. And so in conjunction with that, if you take it that step further and you look at what town council is looking to adopt about outlaw, defining the areas,
locations.
right, of where it goes, then in essence, if you are a farmer's market selling only things you raise, then you don't fall under that limitation because you would not be considered an itinerant merchant or a peddler pursuant to state code. But could there be some other regulation out there that town council has that would impact you? Yes. Or if now that council sees this issue and who is exempt versus not exempt, certainly town council would have it at least in their police powers, and I haven't, researched this part of it, but town council could possibly pass another ordinance that would restrict those exempted people or farmers markets if they so choose.
I'd also ask the committee to think, and we're not gonna vote on the ordinance tonight, obviously. Mr. Johnson made a great point about, you have these folks that come every now and then, that municipal parking lot in front of Bevel's, maybe even the one behind here, although it's packed all the time with employees parking from a variety of places. I'd like to maybe pick one place, that folks could do,
A
cause,
certain night
Well, I
of the
think
week or
that's
something.
perfectly
I-
allowable.
yeah, cause he said that the Yoder's Donuts is very popular, and Mr. Daniels,
Well, could we set aside a certain number of dates?
Yes.
Determined by the council? Like
Yes, just-
12 dates a year, 24 dates a
Right.
year, whatever it
Absolutely.
is.
council would have to approve it, though, council would need to approve
Absolutely
it.
a good idea.
Yeah, okay.
Go back to your point about DBI. I understand, and your question has merit. I just think that council should be very definite about our policy. And as long as DBI is following our policies, I don't have a problem with them scheduling. But I think if we have a policy issue, we need to address it directly with them. That's my opinion.
Was there oversight in this issue, I guess, on DBI's part, or was it just not transferred from us?
I think Mr. Thompson went and got permission from your board, did he not?
Yeah, we have his signed approved application, his liability insurance. I did not think he would spec produce he was selling. I have made him aware of the issues that have been raised here tonight in depth, and I have told him his options, and we are going from there.
All right. It's a prime spot. I mean, it is prime. I'll tell you, right, I mean, pumpkins, I'm like, wow, it's.
A free storefront.
Historic
site goes, I mean, where's the boundary line?
The historic district, Mr. Johnson, is a great point. I think I'm correct on this.
Historic business district.
The historic business district, believe it or not, where my business is located in that parking lot is not in the historic district, but much of the area around it is, generally speaking, from Pizza Hut to Swartz Tavern, Generally speaking.
Old Pizza Hut.
down Main Street and in the little side streets. Yeah, the old Pizza Hut, that's right.
Got a map, I'll show you.
Some in the residential district.
In Oak Street and then.
Business district, though, I think.
No, the historical district, some of
Yeah, but it
it's in.
says business
Yeah,
district.
the historic district swings down to VUMAC.
Yeah, it
Goes
says
down
business.
Main to
Business
Fifth
historical
Street.
district, got it.
There is a difference between
We
them.
need to define it with streets. We need to go ahead and define that baby when we write it. That's gonna be the mother of all ordinances, but
There is a boundary.
We need to make a map, make a map.
we'll do a color, everything. I want the whole thing. I want
I
it
believe
top
there already
notch.
is a map that is available if you codify it in town code.
So is the basketball court in the historical district or not?
It is not.
So you'll be able to park outside there.
But you can't sell beer.
Thank you, everybody. Thank the, Mr. Scott, I'm sorry, you still got some committee reports. So that we're moving forward with the January 1st target date on the itinerant license ordinance. And proceed, I'm sorry.
Zoning permits. We had some discussion at one point, and I think there is a motion made for certain permits to be exempted from paying fees and certain others. And I think it has caused me certainly, and I think it's caused Clerk Daniel some consternation trying to figure out which ones and which ones are not. We brought it back to the committee, and the committee is recommending that we return to the old standard, which is across the board $25 for
Makes sense.
all building permits, and nothing's exempted, electric, mechanical, and all that sort of thing.
I'd entertain a motion to adopt that recommendation. So moved. Motion been made and second to zoning permit fees at $25, each and every one of them. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Advertising on buses, I think that there was a motion to table the matter. Young Josh has asked that he have an opportunity to speak to you guys in regards to nonprofit activities, public service announcements, any of those kinds of things. Not for selling the ads, but I think he had something he'd like to bring to
Like
council.
public notices, like, if somebody wanted to put on the back of the bus, Boy Scout meeting tonight, or
Josh, you want to come up here and do it?
candidates forum.
I would think logically. I don't think the state code permits
Fire
us
open house.
to use an alternative advertising source for public hearing notices or anything like that.
Right.
The state code's pretty specific, it's a newspaper general circulation.
Right.
But things that would be different, like health department having a flu shot or those kinds of things.
PSAs, public service
PSA,
announcements.
exactly.
Yeah, we've had several different organizations, one being social services and other places like that, showing interest in advertising their programs and stuff like shots and stuff like that. One thing I would like to do, contingent on the decision tonight about the original draft policy, is maybe taking out the local business part and going from for-profit to nonprofit. That would be the nonprofit organizations, the government programs beneficial to the public, such as social health, public safety, and public health.
Sure, they're gonna, who's gonna buy the sign?
By the sign, the actual physical
Yeah.
sign?
We would be eliminating the outside portions of the bus, because it would be just an expense that we wouldn't want to
You
carry.
just put on the back of the bus?
No, I think
Will
it's
be on
talking
the
about
inside of the bus.
On
Like
the
a
inside,
rail.
so for the passengers who are riding the bus, they'd see it.
Correct.
Okay.
And that would be a one-time cost to the bus system and locality, depending on where that bus is going, of $310. That's an option that would be put on when the bus is built by Sunny Merriman. New buses, yes. So that would be on new buses. It wouldn't be on any of the ones we have now. So as we buy 2 buses a year,
Gotcha.
they'll be put on those buses.
Members, any thoughts on that, members of council?
I agree. I think we do need to, we'd have to limit, and I don't know if it has to be more, I guess you'd say, in-depth about what is considered a nonprofit or.
Well, I think there's some Fortune 500 companies that are nonprofit.
Listen, Du Bois got some, there are a lot of folks that are nonprofit and the directors are making 6 figures.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the way, I mean,
I like the idea of social, public safety, and public health.
yeah, like the coffee with a cop.
Yes.
Or neighborhood cookout.
cookouts.
The main group I'd like to target is because we have such a large population of low-income people trying to get to like health-related things like doctor's appointments or social
Right.
service, being really focused on community development items like social services or
Attend the East End meeting next week.
But this is limited to public service like that.
That's what I'm hearing Josh say, is that correct?
a main focus, yeah.
Right.
Well, suppose someone wanted to, say, buy my widgets.
They can't.
That would be considered local business for profit. Which I'm trying to eliminate. There's a local business section on page 2 of the draft policy. That's like restaurants.
Is
law
there a
firm.
reason that you are trying to eliminate?
I can probably elaborate on
I'll
that.
explain. During committee, we actually discussed it, and it's fine and dandy, and we were, kind of gung-ho, because it could bring in $310,000 a year. And then he brought up the point that it can't be used as taxpayer money, it have to be used within the buses.
It's like the airport.
At that point, we're like, what's the point? I mean, it's not a benefit to the citizens of Blackstone.
Well, that money could be used to eliminate the local match.
Local match, correct.
But you would have to use the funds generated by that for-profit section as like capital improvement projects and operating expenses per DRPT.
It's like the airport money. It's like, you can't take the airport proceeds and spend them to do curb and gutter downtown.
But you could use that money to, upgrade the bus shop
Sure. and
keep that building up,
Yep.
pay for repairs on other vehicles that go in there. They go for the payroll for that shop.
For the bus system, yes. Anything owned by the bus system, it could be used
I
for.
like the floor. When you get a chance.
How about the people running, how about your salary?
Yes, my salary is, I believe, 75% funded by
How
DRPT.
about the mechanic in the bus shop?
I'm not sure about the mechanics. I would have to check in on that. But drivers, Barbara, being my assistant and stuff like that, Janet, they're
So you
fun.
can't draw a clear line on anybody out there because at some time or another, they're working on bus equipment or,
On certain people, yes. Like for my salary, it's set. It's 75% funded by the state. Janet's salary is 50% funded by the state, and so is Barbara's. So 50% of their salary could potentially be funded by the bus system itself.
I think it gets back to the fairness issue. I mean, for my instance, I wouldn't want the town of Blackstone going and cutting their grass and cutting me out if I
I wouldn't mind if they did a
So-
better job.
I think it's a fairness deal as to do we really want to compete with the private sector at that point?
Thank you,
Well, I
Mr.
look at it this way, that, everybody in this town pays taxes to support the things we do in this town. And anything that we can do to reduce this tax contribution by our citizens and work toward this plan that we've just been looking at, and all this is probably fair game. And I don't look at it so much as whose ox is getting gored, because I sell this or you sell that. but are we doing good for the taxpayers in the town? Are we raising money to mitigate some of the costs of the taxpayer?
Mr. Green, you had the point you wanted to make.
Well, we've got a 3-0 vote here to table this. And I would like to have a better report of what you want to do, so there's no fogginess in this one.
And that was to table without, this is new tonight.
That's what I'm saying.
Bringing up
That's
the
what I'm saying.
nonprofit.
So I'm asking to bring back, table it until such time that you can bring back the proposal you're making now.
Yeah.
So I have something in concrete in writing, I know what I'm voting on.
Mr. Green has moved to tables. Is there a second? Yes, second. I would ask this, that when you're developing the policy on public service announcements, stress local first.
Okay.
We don't want to get burdened with the fact that the,
MTV.
Prince Edward, or, of course, if it's a Prince Edward bus, I guess it'd be appropriate, but I just think that, local is better. And I think, the motion to table, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Next up, Mr. Nash did. There was two other recommendations, internship policy, that's just informational. We want Josh to continue with his progress on the internship. And then electrical service construction policy, that's gonna be in November. All right, very good. Thank you, members of the committee. It's been a lively time for committees. Next up, you have your consent agenda, the wine festival banner request, and the holiday open house. Members of council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve of the two items on the consent agenda.
Nash's move, is it Ms. Thompson second, it's just routine waiving banner fees and that stuff, and the wine festival is this coming Saturday. It's a very difficult day this coming Saturday. You've got a wine festival, you've got a jazz band playing in the park, and you got a rodeo to go to, so I don't know what to wear to the wine festival, because, it's a difficult day, but it's a good problem to have. And then Friday night, the Virginia State University choir is at Spring Hill, so it's also Nottaway High School's homecoming, exactly.
You're busy this week.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Friends Day at Shiloh Baptist Church.
What's that?
Family
Family and Friends Day at Shiloh. My goodness. Moving on to unfinished business, we have the fire department command vehicle. We've taken care of that. We took care of the night's insurance claim, or we addressed the issue.
We can vote on it. Mayor,
Arm,
I don't
yes.
think we voted.
What's that?
I don't think we voted on the consent agenda.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. It was 5, it was 7-0.
I told you I'm on
It's all right.
medication.
Next up, we're on unfinished business number 3, and we're at the Armory referendum. Madam Attorney, I've been emailing Tennessee State Code and trying to find a way to put this thing in a referendum. Advisory.
Unfortunately, at this point, with the way the state law and the charter is, we cannot offer this for a referendum. And the reason for that is in the state code, it says that you cannot have a referendum unless it is specifically authorized by the state code or by the town charter.
Or the General Assembly.
Well, the state code and the town charter, but the only way to fix or amend the town charter or the state code is we would have to go to the Virginia Assembly and ask for either our charter to be changed, or we would have to ask for, which is more remote, which would be basically another statute that they would pass that would be applicable statewide to say, that you can offer general referendums for the Armory. But what would be more feasible if you all wanted to go that route would be the actual change in the charter, and we would have to ask the Virginia Assembly to amend the town's charter to allow for a provision that would allow for a referendum regarding the Armory.
And obviously, it's too late to do that for this coming election, correct?
For November, yes.
Okay.
But,
yeah,
and it's also, I think, for May, for this reason, the General Assembly, whatever actions they approve, back in 1983, the town council voted to ask the General Assembly agreed that following January to let the people of Blackstone decide on dog confinement the following November, because laws passed by the General Assembly don't take effect till July 1st, because the governor has to sign them. So the earliest we could have a referendum, if the General Assembly would allow us, and this council wanted to explore it, would be November 2018.
Well, we've kicked it around for 4 years. What if another issue comes up? I'd like to go ahead and proceed with changing it a charter change.
I'm with you, man.
Do it now. I mean, we never know what could come up. If
Here's something I thought about, Tessie. How about asking the General and Council, this would be y'all's call, obviously. Ask the General Assembly to give the town of Blackstone permission no more than twice every whatever number of years. Twice every 4 years or once every 8 years, the authority to address referendums from time to time. Now, I'm sure they're gonna fear president on that because every town in the world will want to do it. Of course, it's advisory, but I'll be honest with you, just like Mr. Johnson said at the last meeting, give me that referendum, even advisory, any day over people making copies of surveys and you know, and y'all having to count surveys and say, well, okay, and number the surveys.
Sounds like that's going to be our only way.
It might be. It might be.
But-
Do you think that's possible to ask the General Assembly, or you think maybe we have to be very specific, ask the General Assembly to allow us to hold a referendum on the Armory?
I can briefly look into the matter. I already have the statute. I'll just double check on
Okay.
that. I remember when you asked me that specific question regarding the wording, based on the specific statute I had, I was concerned that that may be too broad, given that the statute says specific topics.
Right.
But, you know, perhaps we could more narrowly tailor it, but still have some breathing room for other referendums in the future, if that's what council desired for me to look into.
Right. What does council wish to do?
I'd like to see the option there, if it's possible.
The more we learn, the better.
I mean, like you said, even if we just put in there that it's advisory, I mean, it just helps us gauge the community that we serve.
It's one of those issues, like I said, most issues I would tell you that, look, we never delegate, never subcontract your elected responsibilities to make the tough decisions. But this one is unique. I mean, this is going on 17 years now, which just embarrasses me, because that's one of the things I wanted to get addressed. But, members of council, do you wish to authorize her to continue looking at the possibility of an advisory referendum on the Armory, which of course the earliest I would assume would be next November? And maybe see if it could be Blackstone, because we're such a dynamic town with fast city coming, and we need the right to have advisory referendums. We have an engaged electorate, you know, lay it on thick. Or we just,
I don't oppose any of it, but I'm gonna ask the attorney, is it a futile request or is it a legitimate request?
It's going to really depend, not so much on the law, because certainly we can ask the House of Delegate and our state senator for it, but it's going to really depend on the elected officials that we have that are going to be presenting it to the General Assembly. What is their opinion on it? Do they think that they can get it passed? Do they think that we're wasting our time? That would really be a question more for them than for me, because legally, it can get done to make it happen, but it's a question of, you know, politically, I don't know the answer to that.
Tommy Wright did get he did change the tractor trailer. He gave us the authority to set aside certain places for tractor trailers.
In the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit?
We did that with
Court.
did that through the speed study. I see Mr. Walter McOsmer, who has sat very quietly tonight.
The Armour has a letter of support from Delegate Wright, so he is vested in this.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
I make a motion that we proceed on with tasking our attorney with the possibility of not only adding the Armory as a referendum, but the possibility of giving us the option in our town charter for any referendum in the
So
future.
certainly the Armory, but also to explore other options from time to time as they may arise.
Second.
Ms. Thompson, second Mr. Nash's motion. Any other further discussion? All in
I don't
favor?
see the harm of it.
No,
There's no harm.
I mean, it's gonna cost us a little bit with her, but I mean, that's.
Right. But it won't even cost the county if it's scheduled if you wait to do the referendum at a normally scheduled election. You don't need to go circulate petitions and have a special election. So it may be very effective, cost effective. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Tessie. Ongoing projects. We burned a house on Saturday. I was in South Hill at a hospital ribbon cutting, and my daughter texted me and said, there's a major fire in Blackstone. Please hurry home. And it was just a controlled burn. My heart sank. I was like, you're kidding me. No. That's been taken care of, the house. That
We
was
still
one
have
of
to do the cleanup and the appropriate.
meals tax. And still just Huddle House? All right.
Is that anywhere near being resolved?
It's been 2 years.
You're not gonna get anything. We're just hoping, well, they're reopening, but under a different name. It's not them. It's a different company. So you just,
Can you make them reliable? You can't make them,
The judge is gonna make the decision.
Well, what has happened is that Huddle House, which doesn't go by that, H2O.
H2O.
In bankruptcy, they have gone from a chapter
She put this
11
here. She is
to a
kinda
chapter
cute.
7.
Oh.
I believe at this point. I haven't looked at it in a while, but what that means is essentially that it's a business not worth saving at this point. That there aren't, and there's certain tests of insolvency that bankruptcy courts use to determine whether you're a 7 or an 11. 11 is corporate reorganization, where you have a payment plan and you pay it back and you do things like that. Chapter 7 is basically
Run for the
complete discharge, yeah, just.
Clean slate, just while you're-
And done.
right.
If I can recall, and it has been a while since I've looked at this aspect of it, I believe that they are at chapter 7, which means liquidation. Now, we as a town at this point have done all that we can do in terms of we have filed our proofs of claims that are necessary, and we've also asserted certain priorities for those proof of claims that the towns are afforded by virtue of being a town and them being behind on certain taxes. But, in the long run, I doubt that anything will come of it. We may get paid a little bit on the dollar. I can't say that for sure at this point, what exactly they're going to do.
Okay. Thank you, Tessie. Moving on to street improvement project number 3. As you know, South Main Street is under reconstruction, and yes,
If you
I am
did
well
not
aware.
know that.
I'm well aware.
First week of November, we're hoping to get some paving down. Okay, weather permitting.
So you're thinking, what is the latest projected paving date, start date? If you just
First
said
week of November.
first week of November. Very good.
Not long, I mean, that's 2 weeks away.
Church Street, you got renovations ongoing at 5 dwellings.
Correct.
And Wigglesworth, our rec chairman has said where he wants the playground to be located.
And
Let me make one comment.
Yes, what issue? I'm sorry.
church.
With this renovations that are going on. If we are learning anything from the exercise we're going through here, should we not make a point to caution the people who are having work done to their houses of where the town sits and the town's liability?
Maybe just remind the homeowners, hey, just FYI, you may have been following the night situation.
Be very careful because this is where you are and this is where the town is.
Well, I also think we need to reiterate to the 2 inspectors, the county building inspector and the project inspector.
Don't rubber stamp.
Yeah,
Look it
don't
over.
just go through and all right, this is done, this is done. No, you go through and you actually check. Is it legitimate?
Assuming that they, in this particular
Correct.
case, you feel like it, we don't know. And,
So what you're saying is that you need to tell the person that signs the contract what harmless means? Is that what you're
That's
saying?
right.
Okay.
That we let all parties know that we do not have a dog in the fight.
Right.
That we are only a conduit for the money. And that all we did is take the money from here and pass it over there.
Right.
And who's gonna have the right to
Hold on a second. Mr. Mitchell, then Mr. Miller. Mr. Mitchell?
Is there some way that the people that are getting the work done know what the rights are, about what complaints they have, and who to inspect and who to check, because those people don't know.
It's a very thorough and public process, starting from the community development planning team to the inspection. It should be, I mean, you ask a great question, and the answer should be, there should be no doubt, Mr. Norbeck, the people who are having work done know what's being done and know the ramifications. And I think
There's
what
a-
Mr. Monkey was saying is, might be time, but hey, you folks, they're getting work done, just want to remind you, you did sign
there's an agreement, but we also have the housing rehab team. We also have a rehab board. The meetings aren't wildly attended, but maybe we can energize folks to come to those.
What I was getting to is, they had the work done in their house, but did that connect to the other part of the house that caused it to fall down? You know what I mean? Because sometimes you can cut a piece of wood in half to make room, but you come about it there, right?
Well, you make a good point. He made some comments tonight that I hadn't heard before about I didn't know his heat pump hadn't worked after the project, that sort of thing.
I don't know if he was, I think he was just using that as an example.
Okay. Right.
Somebody needs to check these things out, or have someplace to complain, let people come and complain to town.
But they need,
Well, I would think that's what the board is for, correct?
That's our rehab board,
That's for the rehab board.
should be.
they need to know that the town is not the one to come to for this.
Well, that's true, but you can't blame anyone from thinking that when it's a town any human being is gonna think it's a town project, what you're saying is we need to do a better public relations campaign on what,
On the front end.
on the front end, I agree. I promised Nathaniel Miller, yes.
Okay, I understand what you saying, but in the long run, when this thing all comes down, you're gonna get a bad repertoire. The town of Blackstone, even though you saying it's not your fault, the town of Blackstone is gonna get a bad rep behind this. Because when they take this out to the street, and when people hear this, the first thing that's gonna come in anybody's mind is, hey, well, the town of Blackstone just letting anybody work on people's things.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and the first thing they gonna see is that little kid there. And they gonna say, here, suppose that little kid would've got hurt. You gotta look at things more than one way. Sure, you and I might say the town of Blackstone ain't got nothing to do with it. And then you all saying, well, we're not gonna give you nothing. Perhaps if you would've given these people maybe $500 or $700, you would've changed these people's minds.
Right.
Now they're going out here and get an attorney. They might go out here to Channel 12. You know how these people are. They
Well aware.
love to come here.
My
It's
daughter's
the
in TV news now, I'm well aware.
It's the reputation behind it.
Right.
You're trying to make Blackstone look good.
Well, you make a good point, principle is a funny thing. We all have a principle, but I'll tell you right now, if something happened to that little girl or her parents, I could not say with a good. I would feel I personally, as a human being, would feel like it was on us. I would, and I'll be honest with you. Before the meeting, I was asked how I'd vote. I mean, for what it's worth, I thought Ms. Thompson's motion was in order, but that's hindsight, and that's the joy of not having to vote as being mayor.
One other thing is talking about renter's insurance, stuff like that.
Right.
That wouldn't fall under, when you're repairing buildings like that wouldn't fall under.
No, but if they had renter's insurance, and I'm not blaming them because I know that
Replace the person.
if they'd have had renter's insurance, what I've been told is that the sofa and they'd have received some compensation for the sofa and the TV. That's what I was told. Now I'm not an insurance expert, but
What I'm looking at is there a blame or cause that this happened, because things like that just don't happen. Something doesn't make it loose to get.
well, and the thing about it is the 3 years one thing that hurts the case a little bit. The 3 years that transpired. I mean, it's just
I think Mr. Mitchell's first question was, who do they go to? I think it needs to be made known that there's a housing board.
And there's a full-time housing
Correct.
employee.
But not just putting it on her, but there's an actual
Not to make a decision,
authority.
but to tell them
There's a
where to go
board
and what to do.
authority, and that is where you go if you have any concerns or anything. That's where you go.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't mean to get.
No, it's a good, fair point.
I just said that what we ought to learn from this and get ahead of the curve
On the front end.
and tell people when they accept a contract for us to be intermediary, that, listen, this is where the responsibility is. The town is not telling right then,
Right.
when no one's concerned, so there's no misunderstanding.
But it may run off some folks, some people who would normally sign the agreement. They may say, especially on like what happened tonight, you may see some people now that are skittish to say, well, I don't know. And then all of a sudden we won't have the participation like we need, and then we may not get the grants. That's what I worry
Well, that's
about.
with any contractor, really.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
Well, it's not
mandates
hard,
you
it's
work.
not hard to give money away.
No, it's not. It's easy. I mean, but anyway. Moving right along we did Church Street, Wigglesworth. We have two chairmen, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Nash, and Buildings and Property. They've agreed where they want the playground adjacent to the baseball complex. Could you explain generally where that is, where in the baseball
You're looking at the entrance into the baseball complex
Walking
to the
in.
right-hand side.
Okay.
We changed that today, remember?
Well, you and I talked about it. Did you talk to Ben?
No, I didn't, but it was. what
So I'm
you were
walking
saying.
through the gate. I'm walking through the admission gate. Where is it
On
going
the
to be?
right-hand side. It's what-
Inside.
On the right-hand side,
Outside.
outside.
Outside there?
What was
It's a public,
discussed.
I mean, we don't want to lock the gate to a playground.
No, but I worry about if ball is being played there. Aren't there some dangers of home run balls coming there?
Well, the
That's why-
rec association contacted me today through Dan
Okay.
and Marcia. They called me today and said, are they really serious about putting it on that side? And I said, well, that was what they're discussing, and that's what the two committee chairmen have come up with. And they said, we'd like to go back to what the original plan was, which is to put it on the left-hand side, because you got the T-ball field where you don't get the home runs and all sorts of things.
The reason we said the right-hand side was because we already had the handicap. So we just flip the handicap goes to the other side, the playground goes to the left side.
That's also close to the street too, that's what worries me.
It had to be fenced in.
Oh, fenced,
It'll be
okay,
fenced
gotcha,
in,
okay.
But it won't be locked.
Do you need council, do you need a motion from council?
Well, I think if you're going to do that, I think the motion is you need to go to the school system and tell them you're wanting to
For the location.
relocate a bunch of stuff.
I make the motion that the town relocates the current playground that is located behind the basketball, well, between Oak Street and the basketball courts, relocate it and renovate it with new equipment that we've already gotten through insurance claim on the left side,
Of the entrance to Rigglewood.
behind, in essence, behind the T-ball field.
Gotcha.
I'll second.
All right. Motion been made and duly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? We'll do that by letter to the school board. They don't meet again until the second Thursday in November. All right, East End Planning Grant, sadly, that was rejected.
I've got a question / concern.
All right.
It was brought to my attention that, and I don't know, this is just the way the community talks, but that the elected officials / employees of the town are the ones that I guess you'd say, put the damper on the project and made our score go down. So I just want to
Incorrect.
make sure
False.
that it wasn't, that's all.
I've not heard that.
No, that's not what was said. Now, let me straighten that out.
This is, I just heard this today, so I'm not saying,
Here's what was said. It was said that the at-large councilor and the town did not work diligently toward helping them to get the grant. They said, what they're saying is that they did not see none of y'all out there helping. Now, this is what was said, and I would like to.
Who was they? Just for clarity,
what were we supposed to do?
just for clarity, who was they? I mean, who was?
The people in the neighborhood.
Okay, all right.
Now, this is what was said, that they never seen none of y'all out there with them working. Y'all never came to them and asked them if you all would help them.
what did we have to do?
Eric, you asked the question, and tell me what was.
Well, I'm just telling you, no one up here, none of the 8 of us or any of the town employees, I hope not,
Now,
had any.
You brought it up, and I'm telling you
Well,
what
I'm-
was said.
Well,
That's why I brought it up to
let the
clarify.
record be clear that I vigorously supported this, and I told the town manager when I was
Vigorously
informed,
supported it,
and
me
it was a
and
tragedy to
I-
me. Well, what was that? I didn't know, I didn't know I needed to go talk to anybody when I wrote letters to my delegate.
Okay.
I mean, so I didn't know that.
Well, now you know.
Okay.
Here's the facts, if I may.
Mr. Norbeck has the floor.
This is one of the things that we only missed it by 26 points or whatever, okay? I'm not used to not getting these things because either here or in Amelia, we're usually very successful.
right.
Two of the items simply that could have been done that would have gotten the grant for us is one being a member of a planning district commission. Instead of 50 points, we got 15 points. If we had been a member of the PDC in Farmville and associated ourselves with their regional priorities, you would have been a recipient of this grant. However, we're not. There's nothing we can do about that. Okay? So instead of 50 points, we got 15. Secondly, the grant application was prepared by Southside Outreach, and it was noted that there's not a housing map. We have one prepared, but they did not attach it in there, and we lost a significant points of that.
Well, the housing map that we
Mm-hmm.
had was not submitted?
The map was submitted as part of the preliminary engineering report.
Right.
It had each house number and the location. You've seen it, we've had it.
Yeah.
DHED says it wasn't formally a part of the application, therefore they gigged us on the points. You had those two things right there, it was done.
We
Okay?
had nothing to do with Mr. Green or myself.
That I'm aware of, no.
We could join the Virginia's Heartland, but it would cost about
$17,000.
17,000 a year.
So, we're gonna do better. We're gonna try it again, and it's not on the council people, it's on me. I'm gonna make sure that we've got a map in the application next time, and Yvonne and I are gonna work at it. And we've worked at it in the past, and we're working on the future, and we'll reapply. But it wasn't turned down because of lack of effort. That's a fact. It was turned down because we didn't put a map in the application. It was turned down because we're not a member of the PDC.
$600 and some $1,000.
And the town council got a full 40 points because you put up $600,000 for
It'll be the
utilities.
largest local match of any grant in the history of
Ever.
town, other than Nottaway Avenue sidewalk, be that.
And
Let
that's
me
just
ask you
phase
this- Let
one.
me ask you this, and I don't want to wage war with the state here, but I think it's awfully terrible if they needed a document from us, they certainly could have requested it.
Well, they've had it before. It was part of the preliminary engineering
That's
report.
really disheartening to hear that. And Ms. Johnson?
It's not that they didn't have it, to see, a lot of it was about the narrative. So they wanted to see it in the narrative to show what the map was reflecting also. So, they didn't wanna go that far. If they
Gotcha.
just wanna read the narrative, that part was not in the narrative.
So it's like they were grading an English paper. Instead of looking at the livelihood of people in our neighborhoods, they were grading an English
And
paper.
that's how, but I guess when it's that competitive also, they have to, they,
Arlene gonna do it again?
yeah.
Girl and Arlene gonna do it again?
We can reapply.
I don't know. I think Yvonne and I may give it a shot this time.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
We'll still need Earl to help with the housing section of it, but I think the actual application, I think Yvonne will write it this time. We'll try.
Hold on.
You know, I'm looking at town council, you elected officials, and a lot of times, and I know our experiences about it, I get on you a lot of times about events that you're gonna show up to. That means a lot to the people in the community, or send somebody there. Knock on some doors, how you doing, give them a call. You're town council people, those people out there don't even know half of it. You know what I'm saying, make an appearance on something, mayor, you see the mayor everywhere.
You're not gonna see me November 4th. I'm gonna ask forgiveness for now. I'm gonna be out of town that day. I'm just I got perfect attendance this year, though.
You're town council, I said, somebody, well, I got to work, yeah, I know you got to work, take time, you're in this office. You should take time and go to different in the neighborhood and go to the.
Well, I will tell you this, man, Mr. Mitchell,
Mr. Green does that a lot too.
I will tell you this, not to take up for any of my peers here, but I will tell you that the desire on their part was strong. And if someone had said, hey, if town council is involved and goes to meetings, I can guarantee we'd have camped out. Yeah, I'm not justifying us, like I say, all of us, and myself included, we certainly should go as many places as we can go. But if there had been a requirement that said a council member needs to go to these district meetings or whatever, we'd all been there. I'd have called a special meeting in the neighborhood.
The way it shows up and is right, and
But right. But we're gonna get it next time, I guarantee it.
don't get tomorrow.
I'll be there. So move right along. We didn't get the grants. We're gonna try again. Are we in,
I'm gonna leave, unless you all need me for anything.
give my best to Sam.
Thank you.
Nottaway Avenue Revenue Share Project, we're talking about a ribbon cutting, potentially?
Nottaway Avenue Revenue Sharing Project.
I like that idea.
Either tomorrow, weather permitting, or more likely on Wednesday, we're gonna tar and gravel Nottaway Avenue, the town portion of Nottaway Avenue. The state tar and gravel their section, so we'll have to do ours. Other than the center line being painted, which we have to wait a little while to get the gravel off, so the paint will adhere, we're ready for a ribbon cutting, and that will be anytime after this week.
All right. Well, how about this coming Monday night on October 23rd, we add that to our agenda, set date for ribbon cutting?
Bingo.
That'd be great.
I think also, there were some items in the Finance Committee, and some recommendations from the Finance Committee that we didn't act on, and I think I'd like to bring back, specifically in the East End, project for the water and sewer.
I'm sorry, we did forget that.
I think
You wanted permission to bid $1 million of debt service.
Go out and seek bids for water and sewer for the East End. We need to do it, the roads are in bad shape, and we need to get on with doing it. The commitment will still be valid. If we apply next year, we can say we're putting up this amount of money, but I need to get that process started so we can start putting some water and sewer lines in.
Knowing that we're in favor, I make the motion to seek for debt service.
Seek bids.
Seek bids for $1 million of debt service, which will be used to do water lines.
And sewer lines in the first phase, which is primarily Broad and Tavern Streets in that
Putting
section.
up a 600 and some thousand, now since we didn't get the project, up to $1 million.
The water was on them and the sewer was on us.
This is the seek bids. Mr. Nash is made the motion. Mr. Green is seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. That's just to seek proposals.
Very quickly, I'll go down the committees, the
Yes.
procurement policy. And the recommendation from the Finance Committee is to notify the vendors that we have a 30-day net, or would like to add a 30-day net requirement for payment of bills, except for the utility bills and those that are like bond issues and those kinds of things that have specific dates we have to do, but we know those dates. What we're getting a lot of times is people submit a bill, flop it on the desk and say, I'm looking for a check today. And that's not always necessarily the way it goes. And there's been some consternation with some of the local vendors who'd like to be paid very, very quickly. We try to pay local vendors before we pay the out-of-town vendors, simply because if cash comes available at the end of the month and you guys vote on it third Monday, we try to get the local guys, the Bevelses, the Borums, all that kind of stuff taken care of, and then we go to the out-of-town. But we'd like to notify that we do reserve the right for a 30-day, because I think some folks are getting a little worked up about not getting a check very
So
quickly.
this is basically saying that we're gonna pay people within 30 days of the bill.
Our payment policy is net 30 days.
Net 30 days, all right. Do you want that, a motion on that?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Green, second by Mr. Nash. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Last item on the Finance Committee, the meals tax, and give you a status.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
And Jennifer's here to, I think she's met with everybody that she had sent letters to. Would you like to come up and speak? You don't want to come up and
October 4th, at our October 4th meeting, there were 4 or 5 that had not yet,
speak? I think that's correct.
how do we stand now?
I spoke with everyone, but I'm still awaiting a couple more documents.
Not bad out of 27 establishments, huh?
My interpretation was that they're being cooperative.
Okay, but
Is that correct? Our conversations have been that there might not be compliant,
right.
but they're making every effort to be.
But your motion to pass on October 4th says you had 15 days, which is this coming Thursday, October 19th, or there'll be legal
Been
action?
contacted by all the outstanding.
Okay, but I thought that Mr. Green's motion was that they will be compliant or there'll be legal action taken on the 19th. I want to make
Says
sure.
that they have to have proper documentation, so.
So if they're awaiting more documentation,
Okay.
and she's of the mindset they're being cooperative, I don't see the need for legal action.
Okay,
We'll report on the 23rd.
yeah.
No fine.
That'll be 4 extra days, that's fine, that's fine. Like I said, I'm not, believe me, I don't know eager to see a town be a plaintiff in a litigation, but I just want to make sure we.
What we did worked, so
Okay, very good.
take one for the team going.
All right, new business.
Appropriation, Jennifer put together an appropriation for your consideration to close out fiscal year 17. And included for your consideration is an appropriation in the amount of $150,812, which for the first time in a long time is below the 1%.
It is below the 1%.
So no public hearing was being held, but we do need the approval of the appropriation.
Just so I'm clear, on the very first page of the list, under, at the bottom half of the page, transfer to or new expenditures, town council's got a parentheses, 19,240. That's what was spent, I guess, on wages for the council last year?
No.
You guys approved to pay Yvonne internship at the town council, but there was no way for me to code.
You mean the town discretionary fund?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
discretionary fund.
And the mayor got a $10 FICA expense. That was mine. Thank y'all.
Indeed.
All right. Members of council, what's your pleasure?
I move we pass this very mundane appropriation.
And Mr. Moncur has seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Capital improvement plan, I believe we just did that.
I do need a motion. The only reason we need a motion is because VDOT now requires that their road projects be included in the town or the counties or the municipalities' capital improvement plan. The only 2 projects that I have from them are the next phase of South Main Street. You guys will actually have you had the public hearing tonight, we will have a public meeting on the 23rd, and we did not advertise it, about doing the next phase of South Main Street. And there's a TAP 21, the second phase that you guys did approve after a public meeting tonight. The other items were submitted by the department heads, but VDOT does require capital projects to be included in capital improvement plan. And again, a plan, not a commitment.
Right.
But I do need to tell VDOT that we've got these included in a capital plan that's been adopted.
Entertain a motion by council.
So moved.
Mr. Nash has moved. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Tucker has second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Next up, we got some weatherization agreements.
These are the agreements for Earl and Earlene, Southside Outreach, and doing the home inspections.
These are the 3 big ones that are approved recently.
These are for the 3 houses that have been approved recently.
Right.
And these are the weatherization agreements
All right.
for services.
We had one of our residents who said they want to make sure this goes smoothly, and I think one of those residents in the house, we feel good this is going to go smoothly?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there, I entertain a motion by council to approve this weatherization
There's 2 contracts included.
contract?
Move to approve both contracts, and who needs to offer, who's signing them?
Give me a signatory authorization if you will.
All right. Mr. Nash has moved. Mr. Tucker has seconded. Any further discussion? I will ask for a roll call vote because it is over $10,000. Starting with Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Moving right along. Are we almost at mayor's minute? What's next, Mr. Holt? Committee referrals, yes. I was intrigued by the 10th, what's going on 10th Street?
We've had a request, and I think the request is included in your packet from Sharon Dalton. She's got a, like a turn off or a pull off in front of her house. And I think there is some additional right-of-way that could be abandoned that would allow her to claim some of that property and prevent people from actually turning around at the town limits. It's right at the very end of 10th Street.
Okay.
She submitted a request. There is a survey, and if you can send that to street committee.
I'll
or-
refer to the street and light.
I would ask to allow a motion if you don't mind. I make a motion to approve the request. I think everybody's familiar with it. It's a turnaround there, and she's asking to vacate that because but from that point on is now residential.
I think we need to take a look at how much is needed. It's either 50 feet or the minimum required by VDOT.
Yeah.
Okay, well. that
Give me
makes sense.
I don't
I'd
think
like
the
to-
request
that's
is
fine.
necessarily noxious, but.
Let's
I
get it
think-
right. Street, and light- I'll refer to the
Okay,
street and
exactly.
light committee, Mr. Tucker's committee.
Are you withdrawing?
I am.
And then you also had the pole attachments.
I promised Mr. Nash since
Been after this for a
2013 that I
while.
would be working on this, and let's take the next step and get serious about it, and whatever committee you would choose to.
Health and ordinance.
Health and ordinance.
And subdivision utility request.
We have a proposed subdivision that's been submitted to the town, relatively small, I believe it's 6 lots,
Okay.
maybe 5 lots.
What part of town? Just curious.
It is, I don't know how to describe it, Eppington Forest.
Okay.
On a piece of property there. There is a request in our subdivision ordinance, and I didn't know this until I read it thoroughly, does have a section in there that allows the developer to request cost share on utility extensions. And they're going to
Allows
ask,
him to request.
they're allowed to request
Okay.
in the subdivision ordinance that the town participate in cost share for the extension of utilities. And I think this is probably one that, because there's private property involved, I think it would make sense for a set of eyes to look at it.
All right, I'll refer that as well to health and ordinance. That's all you have on that. Under the mayor's minute, I had 3 little.
May I ask one favor? Can we send that to the Water and Sewer Committee? Because the request, so everybody knows, is affecting a piece of property that Mr. Nash owns.
Oh, sure,
Okay.
but we don't
And
have a
he's-
water and sewer committee.
Well, Fire and Water.
Fire and water, yes.
Mr. Nash is not
Certainly.
on the Fire and Water
Oh,
Committee.
okay, certainly.
He's got an
Yes.
interest in some of the
Fire
property.
and water committee, no problem, no problem. I had 3 items on the mayor's minute, and I'm saying this only to get on the record. And believe me, I'm not upset about this, but several weeks ago, I emailed you and the town manager, I believe a copy of the clerk. I live on Brunswick Avenue, and there are several trees in my front yard where I'm worried about some of the limbs falling and hurting, especially my tree, there's a tree at the corner. I would like some clarity on whether they're town trees or my trees, and however that, if they're town trees, I like to have some of the limbs trimmed. If they're my trees, I'm gonna take care of it, but I think of Taylor Quick and their new, they walk and they make that turn.
Everybody has 3 times,
Yeah, well.
3 times a day.
But you,
How about me?
but the limbs, I do worry that my wife and I went out and looked the other day, it's like, it's getting, they're,
Here's the result of David and I riding out there and looking at it. David, if it's causing a concern, I don't think I need if it's causing a danger, I don't think I need a motion necessarily to
Okay.
trim some limbs. Cut down a whole tree, yeah, probably. But those limbs are certainly hanging over the town's right of way.
Right.
So
I don't want special privilege, I just want clarity, and I wanted to put it on mayor's minute so everybody would know I'm not,
it's a 70-foot right of way, so I dare say that the town would be entitled to make a decision and trim some trees if it's causing an inconvenience for.
We trimmed some trees
issue.
on Brunswick Avenue last week while I was walking around.
I just
the
want to
house
make sure it's
3 times.
done in accordance with, I wouldn't want anybody to say, well, there was so whatever.
David's certainly
I'd appreciate
entitled to get them
that.
cut.
Getting a favor.
I don't want a favor, but I just worry about, I'd be mortified if somebody got hurt. I'd question whether or not, I said, I would tell myself, Billy, you should have you should have asked the town manager. And so I feel better that I've done and appreciate that. David Ostrander, I meant to read his letter tonight. I don't have it. We're certainly losing a great employee, 33 years of service to the town. We've got Gwinnett leaving December 1st. We did any kind of function we could have. I know Gwinnett, you're low key, but we want to have something to,
I think next Monday at 12:30, I think is the date and time
okay, I want to just.
for an event.
Okay.
For council
Monday, 12:30 at the
town shop.
town shop.
No? Is that?
A lot of years of
huh?
service we're losing there, and we appreciate everything y'all have done. Definitely want that occasion noted. And I asked this only for informational purposes. Last year, we didn't do it. There were some extenuating circumstances. Do we want to get together? We've never, have, I call it a chat, an annual evaluation of the manager, how we're doing, how he's doing. I don't see any,
Never hurts to have it.
just to get together and have a closed session, not tonight, but in the future. Maybe set the date at October 23rd, set a date, maybe tack it on the November meeting just to see how we're doing. And the other thing I wanted to ask, maybe town staff help. I had an event a couple years ago, it was called Speak Your Mind to the Mayor. I want to have one of those again in November, and I'm going to see if I can get Blackstone Primary School, and I'd like to maybe just have a staff member there, not to take minutes, but just to, if people have questions that I can't answer, just like, Ms. Thompson had a ward meeting, I want to have that again in November.
As far as the manager's concerned, dilly-dilly.
Well, that's right. So anyway, that's all I have in a mayor's minute. At this time, we have your police report in your packet. Speeding tickets were up this month, I believe, dramatically.
At least
And
stops were up.
yeah, stops up too. Citizen comments. Anyone here in the audience tonight who'd like to ask a question or? Mr. Bagley? I'm sorry. Okay. Well, this time we do have a closed session for personnel, and I believe it's a treasurer's vacancy. Okay.
Mayor, I move we go into closed session for personnel for discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, discipline, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. Blame Jennifer Daniels, she gave it to me.
Very good. Motion made and seconded. It's very clear. I appreciate that. All in favor going to closed session for that reason only? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand brief recess and closed session, 9:19.